In the last video, I mentioned that I'm going to show you an easy way to see if you have problems with your code and how to fix them, as well as how to automatically format your code in the best way possible. So here's our example that we had in the previous video, and let's say I just delete some of the stuff at the end. I delete my quote, I delete my parenthesis. You'll see that I immediately, in my text editor, get these nice red squiggles, which is telling me that something's wrong with my code. And if you go over to this problems tab over here, you can see exactly what this error is. Fortunately, this is pretty small. Let me zoom this in real quick. You can see it says unterminated string literal. So it means that we didn't close off our string. We put in the quote. We're going to get a new error saying we're missing that bracket. And when we put in that parenthesis here, you can see that we have no problems detected. So this problems tab is a great place to go to figure out what errors you have. So if we, for example, had a bunch of lines here, we are scrolled at the very top of our page up here, and we clicked on this, it'll bring you exactly to where that error is. So it's a great way to find errors inside of your editor, and then you can fix them based on what it tells you the problem is. Let's just get rid of all these extra spaces up here, fix our code so that it's working, and there we go, we have no more problems. I'm going to zoom this back out to a normal zoom level here. Now the next thing I want to talk about is code formatting, because this code is correct and it works, but also this code right here is also correct. If I save this, both of these, if I were to run node script.js, hit enter, they both print out hello world correctly. So this code is very difficult to read and understand, while if we just go back a few steps here, you can see that this code all the way back here is much easier to read. So we'd prefer that our code looks like this. When you're first learning how to write code, it's difficult to write good looking code that's easy to read. I highly recommend using a tool called Prettier, which is automatically going to format your code for you in the most ideal way. In order to get started with Prettier, what we need to do is come down here and we need to run the command npm I, which stands for install, -g, which stands for globally, then we type in Prettier. So what this is doing is it's using npm, which is Node Package Manager, which gets brought in when you download Node, and we're trying to install a package called Prettier globally on our machine so we can use it anywhere in all of our applications. Once we do that, we just hit enter. It's going to run a little bit. May take a little longer than for you because I already have this installed, but it's going to install Prettier for you. Then, once you have Prettier installed, you can come over to your extensions in VS Code, search for Prettier, click on the very first one called Prettier Code Formatter. It should have millions of downloads, and we just want to enable that, which is going to allow us to actually use Prettier inside of our editor. Once that's done, we just get back to how our code was before, where it was really ugly looking, for example. Now what we want to do is when we save our file, we want it to fix all of this code problem for us. So to do that, we can click on File, go down to Preferences here, and click on Settings. We're going to open up our Visual Studio Code settings. We can change all the settings that we want inside of here. For example, what we want to do is Format Save. And you'll see there's a setting right here called editor.format_on_save. We click this box, go over to our script, and save. You're going to see it's automatically going to format this for us. Now this is really handy, but you probably only want this to occur in your JavaScript files, for example, and not in your HTML file. So if I save this, you see it's going to give us some weird formatting in here. I don't necessarily want that formatting. So what I'm going to do is go back into our settings. What we can do is up in this top right corner, there's this little icon here called Open Settings JSON. It's going to open up the JSON version of your settings. You can see that editor format on save is right here at the bottom of our settings that we have. What we can do is we can just change this editor format on save, make it only apply to JavaScript by putting in double quotes and then brackets, typing the word JavaScript, and then we want to close off that bracket, put a colon, and then we want these curly brackets. And inside of these curly brackets is where we're going to put the editor format on save true, just like this. So just make sure that your code looks exactly like this inside of your settings JSON. And now if you save this, go over to our index page, we can save, it's not going to format. But if we come over here, we click save, you can see we immediately get that formatting. Now another thing we can do inside of our settings here is if we search for Prettier, you can see that our Prettier extension has a bunch of different configurations that we can do to change exactly how our Prettier is going to configure our file. And one thing that I like to do is just search here for semi. This is going to be for semicolons. I don't like semicolons, so I'm going to uncheck this. And now when I save my file, you can see it removes the semicolon at the end of your JavaScript line. Semicolons in JavaScript are optional. I personally don't like using them, so I like to get rid of this so that those aren't automatic, but you can keep it on there, remove it. It doesn't matter. It's entirely up to you. But now when you're writing your code, if you have a couple spaces in here, maybe you have a random enter in there, when you save, it's automatically going to format your code to look exactly like you want it to. But if you have an error in your code, for example, and you try to save, it's not going to format because you have an error. You need your code to be error-free first, and then when you click save, it'll do that formatting for you. And that's all it takes to set up this automatic code formatting inside of our editor. This is going to be incredibly useful when you're writing your code because instead of having to worry about formatting, you can just click save and it'll automatically format for you in the exact way that you want it. You can even take these prettier configurations, there's a lot of them, and change them around a bit more if you want, but I recommend just leaving it plain. Don't really mess with anything because these are really good default values and are going to serve you really well going forward. In the next video, I'm going to be diving into how to create variables inside of JavaScript so you can actually store dynamic values inside of your code. I can't wait to see you there.